I want you to imagine that you suddenly became rich overnight. Maybe one of your investments went to the moon, a side hustle you started took off, you got a large inheritance, or you won the lottery. Believe it or not, many of you will find yourself in one of these scenarios, so this video was recommended to you for a reason. I mean, let's take the most unlikely option, winning the lottery. Well, actually, when you suddenly get rich, you're far more likely to lose friends and family, have a greater risk of substance abuse, and finally, divorce. Most people who get rich fast have never actually built wealth before and have absolutely no idea how to manage everything. My name is Joe, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why people make the decisions they do when fortune suddenly strikes. If you're someone who wants to understand what really happens when money enters the picture, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you see wealth differently. When you suddenly have more money than you've ever had before, your brain doesn't just automatically know how to handle it. It's like giving someone who's never driven a car the keys to a Ferrari and sending them onto a racetrack. The raw power is there, but the experience to control it is not. But here's where it gets really interesting. I know it might be tempting to go screaming it from the rooftops and rubbing it in your enemies' faces, but the absolute best move is staying as quiet as possible and telling no one. Privacy is really your main priority at this point. You want to be what is known as stealth rich. And this is sometimes also called stealth wealth. You want to be rich, but reduce the chances of any random person knowing how much you have in the bank or what assets you have or your total net worth. In other words, you want to get rich without anyone noticing. Some of the richest billionaires exist among the general population, but you would have no idea because they would wear regular clothes, they might drive a crappy car, and they live in a modest household. But why is it that they practice this type of lifestyle when their money can literally afford them anything that they want to get their hands on? Here's something that might blow your mind. One reason is privacy and security. It actually becomes a liability once you have a lot of money and are well known at the same time. You could become a victim of burglaries or even lawsuits from strangers in your own family. Take the latest string of burglaries on NFL players, for example. The FBI had to recently warn pro athletes about burglaries targeting their homes. And this would happen often when the pro athlete was actually on the road playing a game against an opposing team. It doesn't really take a genius to look up the playing schedule of a rich and wealthy quarterback. And if they know that the quarterback is going to be out of town, well, then it makes stealing that much easier. And these burglars are often organized theft groups who prepare for these burglaries much ahead of time. Quote, they are not targeting poor people. They are targeting rich, famous billionaires, sports stars, said Kent Moyer, who runs the World Protection Group's security firm. Quote, it's very easy for a bad guy to find out where you live. But wait, here's the part that will blow your mind. Let me tell you about Billy Bob Harrell, a man who came into immense wealth after winning a $31 million lottery jackpot in the mid-90s. He was a 47-year-old man who was convinced that this money would help him support his wife and family, as he was barely getting by at the time. But his story quickly turned tragic. After turning into a local celebrity for winning the lottery, he hated telling people no when they needed help. So he did what any generous person would do. He started to hand money out to anyone that needed the money, and then he donated a lot to his own church as well, and splurged on homes and cars for his own family. But this behavior would cause friction between him and his wife because they had disagreements on how to handle the money. And 8 months after he won the lottery, they divorced. Even after the divorce, though, Billy Bob still continued to spend at a breakneck speed, and within a few years was completely out of money and in debt again. He said that, quote, winning the lottery is the worst thing that ever happened to me, and that's what he told his financial advisor at the time. He became so unhappy that he ended his life prematurely in 1990. You could argue that the attention Billy Bob received was not helpful at all. As someone who couldn't say no to people, becoming wealthy in silence would have been a much better outcome for him. And here's what's really crazy. He's not alone in this tragedy. A guy called Jack Whitaker won $314.9 million from the Powerball in 2002. At the time, it was the largest jackpot ever won by a single ticket. He was the opposite of stealth rich. He went around telling everyone and even became famous for giving money to strangers that asked him for help. He gave away millions to the church and even bought his friends new cars and houses. Now, you're probably thinking he sounds like a lovely guy, maybe a bit silly, but he had a good heart and good things come to kind people. Well, that couldn't be further from the truth. His wife divorced him, Friends abandoned him, and his granddaughter, who he spoilt with money, tragically died from an overdose. He later admitted that being too much of a nice guy destroyed both his fortune and his family. So now you understand the importance of being stealth rich. How do you actually do it? Well, even if you keep this as quiet as possible, some people will still suspect you. It's like those TikToks that say, I won't tell anyone when I become rich, but there will be signs. This means you'll become far more likely to get robbed, sued, blackmailed, or scammed. Once people know you have a bit of money, they descend like vultures. Trust me, I've experienced it. They say this is because money changes people. However, over my years, I've realized that money actually just reveals who that person really is. The only person you should tell is an attorney. Make sure you get a good one that specializes in trust and estate planning. A trust can save millions in taxes and provide a healthy layer of privacy. But here's something that most people don't realize. Whenever you do get rich, you don't want to tell anyone how much money you have and never flex it because there's no reason to, in my opinion. There's so much more downside in terms of privacy and security. If you really want to revel in how much money you have, just check your bank account before you go to bed and pat yourself on the back. Understand that the money you have can buy whatever you need, financial freedom, travel, etc., but there's no real reason to really flex it. On the topic of maintaining this low profile, another benefit of not telling anyone you have money is that new people you meet will not become friends with you for the wrong reasons. I'm sure we've all experienced when someone wants to get to know you just because they have an agenda of their own. A problem you may run into if you're too flashy on social media, for example, or you buy things to show off, is that you will start to attract this crowd that values this sort of thing. If your entire Instagram feed is made up of photos of Lamborghinis, well, guess what? When someone sees you out in the wild, they might be interested in getting to know you just because of the cars that you own. Some of these people will be car enthusiasts, but I'm sure you'll also get people wondering how you attained your wealth, and maybe that may not be the authentic connection you might be seeking. If you want a way to avoid this, just drive a modest car. I guarantee that you'll save yourself a lot of money as well as headache. Because when you drive a fancy European car like a Lamborghini or Ferrari, the headache that comes along with car ownership can be nauseating as well. Car maintenance is going to be 5 times more expensive, and sometimes you bring your car into the shop and it can't get fixed for 5 weeks because they need to special order you apart from Europe because it's not made in mass. Not to mention that while you can daily drive a Ferrari or Lamborghini, you might not actually want to. I mean, sometimes they're not as comfortable as normal cars, and you'll likely have to own another car that you can drive during the week. And that's why, according to a study at Experian Automotive, a significant portion of high earners don't even drive luxury cars. And the study actually identified Toyota, Honda, and Ford as the popular choices for the wealthy. If you're able to maintain this low profile, perhaps you drive a normal car, you don't have a social media Instagram that's completely crazy, you will attract a lot of genuine connections and save yourself a ton of headache when it comes to even owning some of these luxury machines like a Lambo. A third reason you may want to consider getting rich and not having anyone notice is that you keep the relationships you do have happy and stable. So I'm going to be honest with you here. People are jealous of what they don't have. Even if your best friend is truly happy for you, 99% of the time you have some success. There's always going to be a small thought in their brain of, what would it look like if my life was like that? Or why couldn't that just be me? I think it's human nature to have these types of thoughts. In some work environments, appearing too wealthy might actually create resentment from your coworkers and make you seem a little bit out of touch. So we want to be careful with our outward image because, number one, I don't think you want to ruin any of your friendships. Not saying that it would happen to you, but some of your friends might get jealous. Number two, your coworkers don't need to know anything at all. I think that's just a general principle. And number three, honestly, when someone doesn't know your financial position, it can actually be quite advantageous for any subsequent negotiations or situations. Think about the last time you had to negotiate something, whether it was a salary discussion, a contract for services, or even something as simple as getting a discount on a big purchase. If the other person knows you have money, they're not going to give you the best deal. But if they don't know your financial position, you have the upper hand. An action item here is to avoid talking about anything that can lead someone to understand how much money you have or how much money you make through methods of logic or deduction. So I'm sure most of you probably know not to share your exact net worth, but if somebody asks you, hey, How much did you pay in taxes this year? Don't say the number. Be subtle about it. Because if you tell someone your tax bill is, say, $500,000, you can probably ballpark what you actually make. Similarly, if you tell me you lost 100K on stocks this week, or you made 100K on stocks, that's probably not a good idea either. At this point, you're only drawing attention to yourself, as well as you might be creating resentment within your friends if they aren't in that position. And in my opinion, there's not really a lot of upside in sharing that information. Another example I just thought of is that if you've ever had any contractor do some service work for you, if somebody knows how much money you're worth or how much you make, they could charge you way more for the same service that they charge for someone else who doesn't have that much money. And while this isn't an ethical business practice on the contractor's end, it realistically happens a lot. There's always going to be this attitude of, well, they can afford it, so I'm just going to charge them more. It's kind of like the same logic when somebody steals from a grocery store or a major chain. You might hear someone say they won't notice it because they're a major chain, their margins are so good, they're evil, etc. Why should I feel bad about it? Unfortunately, this is just human behavior, whether people are thinking about it subconsciously or consciously, and this is something that we want to avoid being the target of, especially when we are rich. But here's where it gets really interesting. The fourth reason to practice stealth wealth and really avoid lifestyle inflation is that I think it can keep you really grounded. This is a bit of a subjective take, but I think if you become so obsessed with possessions, you may lose sight of what's actually important in life. True fulfillment often comes from meaningful experiences rather than accumulating things. When you focus on experiences, whether that's traveling to new places, learning new skills, or spending quality time with your loved ones, you are going to be creating lasting memories and personal growth that, in my opinion, no luxury item can provide you. Experiences can shape who you are, contribute to fulfillment and happiness, and honestly make your life so much more interesting. Of course, I'm not one to completely disregard personal possessions. I did just pick up this Mewtwo Pokemon card after all. But if you had asked me if I'd rather have this card or a week off playing Super Smash Bros. With my best friends in a remote location, I would probably choose the latter. Possessions can become outdated. They could break, and they could also depreciate. I mean, hopefully not my Pokemon card, but they could lose their luster quickly. Having a priority of stealth wealth shifts your goals from impressing others or acquiring items to instead investing in experiences that will truly matter to you, and you will remember over the course of your life. The other thing I want to bring up is that oftentimes showing off your wealth might give you more pressure overall later on in life. If the true point of financial freedom is to quit your job and enjoy your time off, then displaying your wealth could actually do the opposite. Consider the fact that if you buy a big lavish house now, you're going to have more square footage to decorate. You'll probably need cleaners to come by regularly, and landscapers, and maybe even a pool guy. You're going to have this expectation looming over you of keeping up appearances for your neighbors, your friends, and your family. And they all might come with the headache of spending more money to upkeep your life. If you're part of a church organization, you could get some pressure from them in the form of asking for donations all the time. If you attend a wedding, even the expectation of your gift might be a lot bigger than someone who doesn't show off their wealth. There are so many levels to wealth, but if the goals of becoming wealthy are to live your most fulfilling life, then you will be happier, in my opinion, if you just remain quiet about it. Take a look at this tweet on the screen. It summarizes exactly the different levels of rich, and I really like this from last week. Level 1, cut your own grass, probably because you have no money. Level 2, pay someone else to cut your grass, probably because you have some money now. And level 3, cut your own grass. This is so beautiful because now you've probably ultimately retired and you have so much freedom and free time that you can now cut your own grass again. I think this is pretty funny and accurate because the person at level 3 is probably enjoying their life. They're not cutting their own grass because they have to. They're cutting their own grass because they want to, and that's the difference that most people miss about wealth. So, what should you spend money on if you do become rich? I think there are ultimately a few things that you should spend money on, and this is just my subjective opinion. Number 1 is longevity. If you can make your life last longer and spend money on your health, I think it's always a good priority, and it's not very flashy because no one can tell if you're spending money on your health. Number 2 is comfort. If you can make your life more comfortable or convenient, I would certainly prioritize spending money on things like a nicer mattress, direct flights, or even a nice hotel room. Number 3, you could spend money on other people. If you enjoy helping your friends and family, this is a really nice thing and it's a great way to spend the money that you have. Number 4, other hobbies and passions. Anything that helps bring a little bit more fulfillment to your life are great ways to spend money, in my opinion. But here's something that most people don't realize about spending money when you suddenly get rich. When you become rich, all of a sudden, the people closest to you often feel entitled to a share of it, because in their mind, you didn't earn it with honest hard work. They'll start asking for loans that they often don't intend to pay back, or even come up with genius business plans they need you to invest in. Trust me when I say the fastest way to lose family and friends is to lend them money. Just don't do it. They may resent you a little in the moment, but they'll get over it. That's far better than getting into a messy situation where everyone falls out. But what if you want to help out family and friends? Well, I have a simple rule. If someone I know asks me for help and they genuinely need it, then I give them the money and don't expect to ever be paid back on one condition. They never ask me for money again. I recommend you do the same because you don't want people using you as their emergency fund. If you help them out once and they know they can come back for more, they're less likely to be responsible with their own money because they know you just bailed them out again. I know this point sounds quite heartless, but it's really the opposite. Sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind. This will save you far more friendships than just being someone else's piggy bank. Now, let's talk about something that happens to almost everyone who gets rich quickly. When most people get rich fast, they still have a consumer mindset. They look at the money sitting in their bank account and think about all the ways they're going to spend it. My son's friend's family actually won the lottery when he was younger, and his parents went out and bought a new house worth over $10 million, a couple of sports cars, and sent all their kids to private school. Only 2 years later, the dream collapsed. Curtis's friend was yanked out of private school, sports cars were sold off, and their $10 million home was desperately listed for $6.5 million after bad improvements and crushing debt forced them to sell. This all happened because they didn't understand the golden rule. Never spend the principal, only the interest. You should be trying to grow a money tree that produces new income every month, not cutting it down for temporary firewood. That's where your freedom figure comes in. Work out exactly how much income you need each year to live the life you want, then multiply it by 25. So if you want an income of $200,000 per year, you'll need to invest at least $5 million of your new wealth. The idea is that you'll never actually have to dip into the $5 million and be able to live on the $200,000 of interest every year. Even if you haven't received a large sum of money and become instantly rich, it's still worth working out your freedom figure as it's a great target to aim for. The rule of 25 is based on a 4% safe withdrawal rate. I personally aim to grow my money by more than 4% though, just to be safe. That brings us on to the most common thing I hear, which is, where can I find those kinds of interest rates? My account only gives me 0.5%. The truth is, you're not likely to find the kind of interest rates you need for the rule of 25 in an ordinary account. You need to open an investing account. So let's say you somehow got your hands on that $5 million we talked about earlier. How could you invest it? Well, at this stage, it's way more about preservation and growth. Of course, this does depend on your age and how much risk you want to take. But here's an example of how I would consider splitting it up. First of all, I'd put $1 million into a low-cost total stock market index fund, just like this one. It includes over 1,300 different stocks. So it's very diversified. Its top holdings are big companies like Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Nvidia, and Alphabet. This is your long-term growth engine and has averaged about 9% per year over the last 20 years. But future returns could be higher or lower. On $1 million, that's around $90,000 a year. Second, I'd put $1 million into a low-cost total bond market index fund, such as this one. A bond fund is a pool of loans you give to governments or companies. Instead of owning one bond, you own a basket of many, which pays you regular interest and is generally considered safer than stocks. This should help you with stability in the event of a market crash. Broad bond market indexes have averaged 4% returns per year. On $1 million, that's $40,000 a year. Third, I'd put $500,000 into residential real estate, like single-family homes, and another $500,000 into commercial real estate like warehouses. I like this split, as residential real estate is great for property appreciation. US housing has historically grown at about 7% annually. So on 500,000, that's $35,000 a year. Commercial real estate is great for steady cash flow, as tenants normally stay for years and also maintain the property. If you buy right, then this historically gives returns of around 8% per year. So on 500 grand, that's $40,000 a year. Fourth, I'd put $500,000 into blue chip crypto like Bitcoin and Ethereum. Bitcoin has been one of the best performing assets of the last decade, so it makes sense to have it in an investment portfolio. However, it is highly volatile and can go down just as fast as it goes up, so treating it as a 5 to 10% moonshot allocation makes sense. Bitcoin's last decade saw explosive gains of 49% annually, but past performance doesn't predict the future. So let's normalize it to a 10 to 15% range. $500,000 could average roughly $62,500 per year. Fifth, I'd put $1 million into a high interest savings account, such as this one from SoFi, that offers up to 4.5%. On $1 million, that's $45,000 a year. Altogether, that example portfolio could generate around $312,500 per year in passive income if markets perform like their long-term averages. But remember, past performance is no guarantee of future results. The ones paying very close attention will realize that I missed out $500,000 from that $5 million investment portfolio example. That's because you should spend that $500,000 on whatever you like. Call it fun money. I went through this stage and realized that having money isn't about Lambos or mansions. It's about never having to do things you don't want to do. Real wealth is waking up and deciding how to spend your day. Don't be like those lottery winners who blow it, or chasing possessions, not freedom. The rich that stay rich are the ones who buy back their time. Once you secured yourself, think beyond yourself and leave a legacy. So when you do get rich, make sure you tell no one. The quietest billionaires are often the happiest ones. They don't have to deal with the drama, the fake friendships, the constant request for money, or the pressure to keep up appearances. They can just enjoy their wealth in peace. And that's really the point, isn't it? When you get rich, tell no one, but do tell them about my YouTube channel. If you appreciate the message in this video, make sure to share it with a friend or perhaps a family member of yours. And if you do become a billionaire, make sure to invite me to your parties, the parties that don't exist, because you're practicing stealth wealth. See, I almost got you. When you get rich, tell no one. Your future self will thank you.